Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 150 episodes of mead making education, information, and entertainment. More than 100 guests have stopped by the Mead House, professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey, and brewers just like you and me have all visited to share their knowledge. Hey, the Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a keyholder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. You can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player, and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. The Mead House, mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 197, 3 to go until we hit that big 200 number. Boy, what a milestone, you think? Hey, I was just out in the garage repairing the weed eater again after Ryan tried to trim an oak tree with it. All the while, Jeff stood there watching with a fistful of Kansas City barbecue in one hand and a cold beer in the other, just laughing his ass off. And I'll probably have to mop the kitchen floor after they leave. But hey, my name is JD Webb, and you are at the Mead House for the next 90 minutes. Hey, the play locations, they're all listed on the front page of the website. I'll run down a few of them here. iTunes, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon Music, all over the place, blah, 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 blah. Hey, check the front page again on the website, themeadhouse.com. A whole lot more other locations there as well. Hey, in this episode, continuing the pandemic brewing session as we wrap this up. Our guest this episode returned to the house last here on episode 159. He got his start brewing while on a backpack trip of all things with tang and bread yeast. It takes all kinds, I guess. We might even run that by him again one more time here tonight. It was just it was kind of funny the last time he was here. Hell of a way to get a start, but he's a brewing fool now. I guess if you can't stuff a six-pack, a bottle, or a six-pack or a bottle of whiskey in your pack, it just you might as well just make it on the trail. So what the heck? But hey, when he was last here, he talked about using a sourdough starter to brew with. So we'll be talking with Robbie Hausner again this evening to find out how that worked out. And what else he's been up to during this year-long pandemic thing that we've been experiencing. In segment 2, hey, we talked about it in the social club last week. One of the questions came up. Cleaners, sanitizers, and there's a whole bunch of them out there on the market now. And so we're going to run through a few of them and give it a little bit of discussion. And then, this might even turn out to be a new feature here at the Mead House. I'll have to run it by Ryan maybe after the show tonight during our little post-show meeting. How about Ryan's random thoughts? We'll go to Ryan with that in segment 2 as well. And then segment 3, the social club. This is where we try to answer questions from mead makers with no formal expertise other than what we've experienced in our own brew house. All of this and more here at the Mead House. But first, thanks to all the Mead House key holders who keep the Mead House podcast free. You too can become a Mead House key holder and help support the show for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great thank you gifts to send out to you, plus a listing of key holder only content. So get over to patreon.com, search for the Mead House, or just click on the show notes, the link in the show notes. Hey, what are we drinking tonight? All right, in Mead House fashion, I'm double fisting it here tonight, and this is a tradition that we started, oh God, I don't even want to know. I don't even remember how long ago. But at any rate, I've got a mead in one hand and a bourbon in the other. The mead tonight is an offering from Sap House Meadery. This is Deviant. How appropriate. This is a mead made with cherries and pasilla peppers. And let me tell you something. I cheated. I took a little swig before the show, and this is an awesome mead, guys. Oh my god! On the aroma, it's just 100% cherries. I mean, you could just open the bottle and just set it out, and your house would fill with cherry aroma. Really awesome aroma. And then you get a little tiny whiff of the Pasilla way in the background a little bit, and then a honey aroma. The taste, mm, mm. Wow. This is there's this perceptual sweetness. This is not a sweet mead. This is a very dry mead. But the cherry flavor gives you this perception of sweetness right up front. And it's not like cherry juice. It's not like a cherry soda or anything like that. I mean, if you've ever put a nice tart cherry in your mouth, and you can buy them by the bagfuls sometimes in the supermarket. I mean, this is exactly that. I mean, like exactly that. Wonderful, outstanding cherry flavor. The pasilla chili pepper comes in way late, mid to late palate. Not there's not a lot of heat. Pasilla peppers aren't all that hot. They're kind of on the mild side. But you get some of that chili flavor on the very back end, and it finishes very dry. Outstanding offering, Evan Henderson. I know you had a lot to do with this, but this is really an outstanding meat. This ought to be a staple over there at Tap House for sure. Now, in my other hand, doing a bourbon tonight. This happens to be Bird Dog, the 10-year-old bourbon whiskey, very small batch. Clocks in at 90 proof. This is I've always said that I don't have any favorites. Uh, let's just say this is one I really like. uh, all three of the big components are there: the vanillas, the brown sugar, the barrel char. Mm, wow. Mm. A little bit to wash that cherry mead down again. Let me take another sip. Mm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good stuff. 90 proof. If you're not akin to the higher ABVs, you can put just a splash of water in there just to calm it down a little bit. But this is an outstanding bourbon. I love this as a sipper late in the night and maybe before bedtime. And good stuff. Bird Dog. This is the 10-year bourbon whiskey. So with that, Ryan, what did you put in your cup tonight?
I have a Nathan Stigman mead tonight. This one now again, he likes to name all of his stuff in Latin. Let's see here, Patrie Fumus Igni Dulce. So I gotta, again, I'm trying to muscle through here, but I think this is country country heat fire sweet. Oh, it's a little rhyme. That's nice. Country heat fire sweet.
There you go.
And it says mesquite and buckwheat honey with smoked grains, Pilsen and amber malts, and Urillo hops. Braggot, 8.6% ABV.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it's got it all in there. I was a little nervous when I first was deciphering this, and he called it sweet. And I said, "Oh no, here we go. Somebody's gonna make a sweet braggot." And I don't know how I want to feel about that. Um, but it's not cloyingly sweet. It's actually very nice. It's got a lot of body to it. I really enjoy the body. There is a little bit of that buckwheat funkiness, barnyard there, and the smoked grains are very subtle, but or understated. I should say understated, not subtle. And but I'm not, really not getting much of the hops in terms of the aroma, but there's a little bit of the bitterness there, maybe just a hint of the aroma. But it's a really really nicely well done braggot. I think that Nathan, you did a very good job on this one, and I am enjoying that. And then backing it up, I found an old bottle because I've got to get through some of those. And it is it's one of my dark braggots, but it's a very light bodied. So it's kind of like a Schwarzbier, if you're familiar with that style, which is dark in color but light in body, and just a few little roasted malts in there, and very nice, very kind of refreshing, and got a lot of character. So that's going to be chasing this one down as we get a little deeper into the show.
Awesome. Sounds good. Anything else? Oh, that's it.
Yeah, I had some nice barbecue tonight, but that's all done.
There you go. All right. Hey, Jeff, you're always good for something in your cup. What is it tonight?
Well, in Beadhouse fashion, I have two drinks in front of me. One of them also happens to be Deviant from Sap House. Crack this guy open, and you are 100% right. The cherry aroma is just fantastic off this guy. I'm not getting a lot of the pepper myself. I'm getting more of the floral honey, but it is a gorgeous aroma. And then, yeah, you've got that beautiful kind of, I would say, off-dry tart cherry flavor. The pepper especially comes in like mid to late palate with a little bit of smokiness and a little bit of that. It's just a little bit peppery. And this is, I think, the way to do a mead with pepper in it. It's not hot. It's not gonna just roast your taste buds. It adds something without, being so terribly offensive that you can't take another drink for 5 minutes, or you don't want to pour another glass. I mean, I could probably finish the bottle and I'd be just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, the body is real nice. It's a kind of medium, light to medium, and I love the tart cherry flavor. Cherry has to be one of those styles of mead that's been done so many times, kind of like up there with blackberry, that everybody has tried that at least once. And this is just a really nice presentation. It's not cloyingly sweet. It's got a great presentation with that fruit, and the other, the Pasilla peppers really kind of add to it without taking away from it. So very pleased with this one. But Sap House consistently turns out good stuff, so I'm happy to add another one to that bout.
Yep.
In my other glass, I have you guys know that I've been on a sour kick. We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
I have a beer from a local brewery, Crane Brewing, and this is their Guava Weiss. It's a Berliner Weiss style, and they've added guava fruit to it. And the sour Berliner Weiss style is more pronounced than the fruit, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's really light, refreshing. It'd be great on a hot day, and the tropical fruit just kind of adds a little twist to it there at the end that I kind of like. So, I'm really liking this style actually of the Berliner Weiss beer, where they've been adding fruit to it in a lot of different situations. So this is one of those that I might try and emulate with a braggot at some point or another. And speaking of braggots with fruit, tonight our guest is Ravi, and Ravi joined us last time in May with his brewing buddy John. They were talking about a braggot that they had made with some mango, and so, he, like JD mentioned, he had teased us a little bit with a mead made with a sourdough starter that he wasn't ready to report on yet. And it sounds like he's been very busy over the pandemic with quite a few meads going into bottles lately. So, Ravi, welcome back to the show. What's in your glass tonight?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me back. I have in my glass a green apple cider that I made. and I was influenced by you guys, and I now have a second glass with some bourbon in it.
Perfect.
New Riff bourbon. It's a single barrel bourbon, 104 proof. I've never had it. I've never had it before, but I just tried it as a bottle I bought a couple weeks ago that I just opened, and it is smooth. You cannot tell that it's 104 proof.
Wow. Well, what's it called, Robbie?
It's called a New Riff. It's a single barrel Kentucky bourbon. It says a new riff on an old tradition.
Wow.
Which is,
Yeah. I'll have to. I'm gonna have to look for that one.
It is really good. 104.8.
Wow.
But you can't taste it. I mean, you can taste it, but you can't taste how strong it is.
Wow. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Very nice. So let's go right into that the green apple cider that you're drinking there. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So the green apple cider. So after the last time I was on your podcast, I heard you guys talking about trying to do a Belgian and using a darker honey like avocado honey.
Mm-hmm.
And so that sounded amazing. And also I'd never heard of avocado honey before. So I bought some, and it turns out it was a lot cheaper to buy 60 pounds than it was to buy like 5 or 10 pounds. And so, a bucket got delivered to my apartment building. And the only problem with buying 60 pounds of honey, which maybe is not a problem, is that you can only make 5 gallons of mead.
That's very true.
So I made a couple different kinds. I had to buy a couple more buckets, but one of them was this apple tart. So avocado, honey, green apple, cut up a bunch of green apples, citra hops, and then I racked it on pecans and cinnamon.
Oh, dude.
Interesting.
Yeah, I took the opportunity to experiment a little bit with nuts. Like, I hadn't really heard of a lot of people doing that.
Right.
But I roasted some pecans, and I didn't put them in at the beginning because I didn't really want them to sit on it for too long. But I let it sit on it for like 3-ish weeks after I racked it the first time. And the yeast is a Y yeast 4766. It's a cider yeast.
Okay.
And it's really good. The pecans don't come out too strong. It's just like a kind of a hint in the back of your mouth. But the hops, citra hops, really paired well with the apples, and it's not too sweet. A little bit bitter, very good. A little bit tart too. So it's really good. I'm very happy with it.
Excellent.
Did you do anything to the pecans at all, or did you just roast them? Did you crush them up at all, or?
No, we roasted it on in a frying pan just for a little bit, just to get them a little bit burnt.
Right.
But I didn't crush them up or anything. I didn't want to break them into too small pieces, just because I didn't want a lot of like nut oil going into the. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Gotcha.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a concern the couple times we've talked about nuts. Sure.
Yeah, and then so a couple of the other ones I made. First of all, the apple tart came out to 11.5%.
Nice.
Yeah, really good. And then the other one that I'm really happy with is there's a banana bread that I made. So I mushed up a bunch of banana and put them in a cloth bag.
Mm-hmm.
And I added a little bit of malt and like lactose just to make it taste, give it that mouthfeel, a little bit more like a bread, and racked it on oak and pecans, and I used a Belgian yeast as well. And then the other one I made, which I basically just followed your exact advice for how to make a Belgian tasting mead, and I used avocado honey again because I had a lot of it. Vanilla, I added dark malt, and a couple weeks in, I added some Belgian candy sugar. And the honey, I don't know how to pronounce this. It's either bucket or bochet.
Bochet.
Bochet. So I boiled the honey a little bit while I was before I put it in, and while I was doing that, I added a ton of cocoa nibs. So it's got a little bit of like a chocolatey flavor. This one's definitely a little bit sweeter. I wish it wasn't quite as sweet, but it is not too sweet, but it's really good. A little bit of a vanilla-y, dark, chocolatey flavor, and that one came out to 13.5%.
Now, you are you just pulling these out of a hat? I like your style, man.
Yeah, well, you asked me the same question last time. I think, there are just things that so the Belgian candy one, I pretty much, like I said, I think it was the episode I was on last time where you talked about all the things you could do to a meat to make it taste more Belgian-y or darker.
Sure.
And I just did all of them, like bochet, a darker honey, added some vanilla, added cocoa nibs, added some malt. Like I just did everything that would make it taste dark. And then I used the Belgian yeast so that it would have a Belgian-y flavor. And I think it really does taste like a Belgian. The other ones, like the banana bread and the apple tart, I just tried to make an alcoholic version of foods that I like. So, yeah. I just think of like what ingredients go into banana bread and like, would those be good in a drink?
What's that book, guys, that we talk about all the time here, put out by Chrissy Mannion Zippor?
Mead pairings and
yeah,
mead and pairings. Oh God,
how embarrassing! Oh my God,
yeah.
Somebody look it up, please. Anyway,
so
Chris,
I'm not so much pairing my mead with food as I am making. I'm saying I'm taking it a step further. Like
sure.
Some people they pair a drink with food. I'm just kind of mashing the two concepts together.
Yeah, no. Chrissy's book this is something that could lay on your coffee table. You could also put it in your repertoire of cookbooks in your kitchen. It's not just about mead; it's about food and mead. So you talk about some of your favorite foods, and then, what was it again, Jeff?
The art of mead tasting and food pairing.
There you go, Chrissy. I apologize. I know she listens to the show too, but Robbie, this is a book that gives you inspiration. So you talk about some of the foods that you like, and then try to make a mead from those flavors and tastes that you enjoy. Chrissy's book is a wonderful starting point. I mean, complete with food recipes, not just mead recipes, but food recipes. And then, of course, the whole pairing idea, being able to, if you're a foodie, being able to pair a mead with a particular food or food group even.
Well, I like food. I don't know how good I am at making food, but yeah. I'm really good at putting a bunch of stuff in a bucket and then letting it sit in the closet for a month.
Sure.
Doesn't work so well with food.
Yeah. So the pandemic, I don't know, about where you're at. Out here in California, we were, went through the whole lockdown thing. Things are starting to ease up a little tiny bit out here, but it gave cause to some of the mead makers that we've talked to just either ramp it up or just even ramp it down in some cases, and not do too much more than what they were doing before. How did you spend your pandemic in your brew house?
Well, I made a couple of different things, and I probably didn't make quite as much as I probably wanted to make more, but honey's kind of expensive, so I made. I think the last brew that I made, it took about 2 months, like with fermenting and then racking and then aging a little bit before I bottled it. And I ended up bottling about 175 bottles, 12-ounce bottles. And then before that, I basically right after I talked to you last time, I made a 5-gallon of like a very dry peach mead that turned out really well.
Wow, very good.
Yeah. So I guess not a ton. I haven't done a ton, but more than I had before. So yeah.
So before I roll the mic back over to Jeff, 'cause I know he's got a burning question about some sourdough stuff here. The tang and bread yeast that got you started in this, have you ever revisited that and tried something different other than bread yeast?
I haven't. I've definitely thought about it. Whoa, fire alarm.
Uh-oh. Is that somebody's
Sorry.
fire alarm going off?
No, it's someone is cooking and my girlfriend's making dinner
Happens all,
and it's a little smoky.
happens all. Hey, tell her I
You got
burned
all
a
of
few-
that?
Yeah, I got all that. Tell her I burned a few things too.
Yeah, he says he's burned a few things too.
No, we won't
He's
cut it
ignoring
out.
you.
I'm not going to edit it out.
Yeah, don't edit it out.
Hey, we like to have
speaking
fun
of-
here. So
Speaking of my girlfriend, she makes all of the labels hand drawn. So this time she hand drew 170 labels with ingredients and ABV and a little cute picture on each one.
can you, I tell you what, email me a couple of them, info@themeathouse.com, and let me put them up with our show notes when we post this episode. How's that?
Sure. You said info@themeadhouse.com.
Yeah, info@themeathouse.com.
Cool, I will.
And then you don't have to say her name here, but put her name on the email too, so that I know who to give credit to the artwork.
Sure.
Very good. Thank you.
You were asking about Tang. So I have thought about revisiting it again. I think I would. I'd probably not use bread yeast.
Yeah.
And I would probably try to do a larger batch than however much fits in a soda bottle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff. I don't know if you've ever been on the subreddit r/prisonhooch.
Mm-mm.
But it's kind of like a lower class version of r/mead. And they make all kinds of stuff on there. I saw a bunch of people made a bunch of, I don't know if I would call it mead because their main source of sugar was Jolly Ranchers. But yeah, I think there are a lot of creative people out there making alcohol out of anything they can.
Sure. Absolutely.
I did make about 2 liters of fermented Mountain Dew. I added Loveland like champagne yeast to a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew.
Oh, really?
And I was not expecting it to do anything because Mountain Dew has just like so many preservatives in it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it worked.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I didn't take any kind of hydrometer measurement because it was like already carbonated and I wasn't sure how that would.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would affect anything, and also I wasn't being too thorough. But it definitely fermented. It definitely became alcoholic.
Oh, wow. I love it. Jeff.
So you can say that I've definitely been busy during the pandemic.
There you go. Jeff, go ahead, bud.
So, we talked about it once or twice before here. You mentioned last time that you had a mead that you started with a sourdough starter. Tell us how that went.
So it went pretty well. I would not say it was the first attempt, and I would not say that it was amazing, but it was definitely it was drinkable, and it was very interesting. So first of all, the sourdough starter, my brother had it for 3 years. He gave me a little bit of it, and first couple months of the pandemic, everybody was making bread, so
Yep.
I was making bread. So what I did is I was a little bit worried about just adding it to a bunch of honey water. I wasn't sure that the yeast would be able to handle it. So what I did was every day for about a week, when I fed it with more flour and also some honey, and also an eighth cup of honey and more flour. And then I would use half of it to make a loaf of bread. And I did that for like a week. And I noticed that it was reacting way more than it would normally to just flour. So that was encouraging. And then I added maybe 2 tablespoons of it to a gallon of honey water. I forget how much honey I added to it. I think it ended up being like 5-ish%. But what was really interesting is that it started tasting like green apples. Like I didn't put any apples in it. It was like just 2 tablespoons of the sourdough starter that I was kind of like training for a week, and honey, just I think wildflower honey and water. And there's like a slight hint of like sour apple. It is very sour. It's very, very sour. I would kind of like to try it again on a larger scale. I think maybe if I did it in a bigger batch so that there wasn't quite as much, because it's starter, so it's got like flour and stuff in it. So
right.
I think it was a little hard to when I racked it to like not get a bunch of weird floury sediment. So I think if I did a bigger batch with less of it, it might work a little bit better. Definitely was an interesting experiment that I would try again. I will not say it was my favorite of the things I've made.
So Jeff, I'm thinking that the starter with the flour is going to settle out. The yeast, probably lighter than the flour, would stay longer in suspension.
Right. Yeast being active will stay in suspension and just keep doing its thing. But the flour kind of, once it's given up anything the yeast can act on, it's probably going to kind of just start to sediment, or what do I want to say, flocculate out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I wonder if the sourness came from the yeast starter or not. What do you think, Robbie?
That's my guess. I mean, it tastes. I mean, when you use like a wild yeast, you can't really predict the flavors. We often end up with a sour. And I think it's just the same thing. I mean, the yeast that's in sourdough is just a wild yeast, right? Like when my brother made the starter 3 years ago, he didn't add any yeast to it. He just like left some water and flour out until it started bubbling.
Interesting.
Right. Well, and
right,
usually with sourdough starters, you get a colony going, so you get some.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's like Saccharomyces cerevisiae. There's the Brettanomyces, and there's, more than I can remember from the microbiome class that I had 15, 20 years ago. But it's interesting to me that the standout flavor that you recall from that is green apple, because I know like D47, for example, has been noted to throw some kind of like esters or phenols that are reminiscent of green apple too.
That's what I was. Yeah, I mean that's what I was gonna say, is that I think it's the esters and stuff from the yeast, from the wild yeast, that are giving it that flavor. It was really interesting because I was not expecting any kind of fruity anything. It surprised me.
Now, as far as like management goes, how did you handle like nutrients, temperature? Were you trying to keep the temperatures low? Were you feeding it well, or kind of just guessing from the hip? How are you handling all
that? Basically, most of what I do is guessing from the hip. But I didn't add any. I didn't add any nutrients or anything. It was whatever temperature it was in my apartment. Yeah, like. But it was not a well thought out experiment.
Well, I would have used even some of that liquid and make a loaf of sourdough bread with it.
Yeah. That might
Yeah.
actually work.
Absolutely.
I don't know if the alcohol would like hinder rising though.
Well, it depends on how high the alcohol is, but I mean, if you're fermenting with that with some success,
Yeah.
it shouldn't have any effect on the bread rising. Uh, but
Maybe I'll give it a try.
absolutely worth a try. Absolutely, I'd do it. Ryan, any questions for Robbie?
Robbie, what has been your you'd say your biggest success in your short brewing career, and what has been your most resounding, or let's just say, or your funniest failure?
Hmm. Well, I'm going to combine those two because the Belgian candy that I made this time around is probably the best one that I made so far. It's just so good. All the flavors work really well together. It doesn't have any, like, I really, really like it a lot. But I will say that I brewed it in a 5-gallon glass carboy, which about 3 weeks into fermentation cracked
Ooh.
slightly.
Mm.
And so I had to overnight order a plastic bucket, which I would just say never use. I'm never going to use a 5-gallon glass carboy again.
There you go.
So that arrived the next day. It was like duct taped glass until the bucket arrived. So
Wow.
I probably lost like a quarter of a gallon, just like slowly leaking out onto the closet floor.
Oh my God.
But what didn't leak out tastes amazing. So,
Yeah.
there's your failure and success all in one.
There you go. Yeah, we did. We've got a few episodes talking about how glass carboys have impacted our brewing all around the house here. I think Ryan was the first one to start out when he had one explode on the basement floor, the kitchen floor or something.
Yeah, I've had a few shatter in my career.
Yeah, I've done
Yeah.
a couple, and we've all had it. So, and I switched over to kegs, and no more glass carboys for me. I store everything in kegs, and of course I brew in my stainless steel. But glass carboys, I mean, I have the dropsies because of the arthritis I have in my hands, and so I just can't hang on to stuff like that. So that's like a danger thing in my house. Anything glass,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it was just a pain in the ass to move around too.
Yeah.
And like the first thing I brewed in it like big crack showed up like around the bottom.
yeah. No, I hear you, man. We've all been there and done that, and there's a lot of good substitutes out there for glass, for sure. Ryan likes those big mouth bubblers, in place of the glass carboys. I know, and Jeff, I
Yeah.
know he brews in a stainless steel as well as I do. So,
Yep.
I wish I had space for one of those big ones.
That you know what? They don't take up many more room than a glass carboy. To be honest
Really?
with you. Well, it depends.
How many
on
gallons is it?
7 gallons.
The one you have?
7
7,
gallons.
okay.
It's just a bucket. It's just a big stainless steel bucket. It has a valve at the end, at the bottom of it, that you can rack with. And I've got the lid has you can order the cooling unit that comes with it and hook it up to a cooling. If you've got some way to pump cool water through
Right.
it. But honestly, it's no bigger than a glass carboy. The footprint
Right.
is no bigger than a glass carboy. So,
Or the
It's
like
interesting.
6.5 gallon buckets you've got at the homebrew store. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's
they're-
what I'm using now is those 6.5 gallon buckets. I have like four of them now.
yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, worth the investment that I made several years ago.
All right, I'll look into that.
Yeah, absolutely. SS Brewtech, I believe, is where I got mine from. You can I don't have the web link, but you can Google them. They're easy to find. SS Brewtech, and they've got a whole line of brewing equipment. So does Ryan. What's that other outfit?
Anvil?
Yeah, they do too.
There's actually quite a few people, you know, lately that have different stainless steel options. Anvil and oh man, the names are escaping me too. But if you look around for them, there are some fairly affordable options. I'm also using SS Brewtech, but I might be looking at other options here once I can justify getting another stainless here.
Yeah, I might take a look. I mean, it's gotta fit in like very small. I have a limited closet space available, but
sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, Ravi, certainly enjoyed having you on the show again, and you.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
I love I dig your brewing method. Just reaching into a hat and pulling out some ideas is just awesome. I dig that kind of stuff, and much of a kind of a DIY guy myself. I like it when guys just throw the rules out the window and just reach for stuff and start doing it, and then record the results and tell others about it. And that's what we enjoy talking to folks like you here on the show. So appreciate you spending time with us tonight, man.
Sure, it was so much fun. Do you mind if I ask you guys a quick question? I have a question that I can't seem to find online.
Go ahead.
Of course.
I am really bad at like when somebody's like, "Oh wow, this is good. Can you like give me a recipe?" And I'm like, "Well, no." So my question is, how do you guys keep records of like what you put in the mead and like what nutrients you added and how you added the nutrients and how long you waited? Like, what's a good system or do you also have no idea what's going on?
No,
that is a great question.
Absolutely. And what I did, I have a notebook, just regular, like it's a three ring binder. And I created a sheet. In fact, it may, I'll have to look on the website. I may still have it up on the website, but it's just a sheet that has everything that you would want to put into it, all your nutrient, everything, and it's a note sheet basically. And you just write down everything that you put in the yeast, when you start, what your temperatures are, what your gravities are, and I just keep it in a 3-ring binder. Jeff, how do you keep your notes? Jeff?
Sorry, I dropped the phone.
So Jeff's been drinking too much mead tonight.
Apparently
we do that around here.
I thought I was chill, but apparently just a little too much. No, I pretty early in the show, I think the sheet you're talking about, I made that, and I tried using that like kind of loose leaf or in a 3-ring binder for a while. I've also tried just having more like what do they call them, the college composition books, like the model, like black and white spotty cover.
Yeah.
I keep losing those, and so really what I decided I needed was something I couldn't lose. And so I just started using an app called Evernote, and every time I start a new batch, I start a new note, and then it saves to the cloud. So even if I lose my phone, I can look it up on the website, and I haven't lost recipes since.
Do you like continuously add to it, like on brew day, if you decide to spur of the moment throw something else in there? You just like add that on?
Right. I kind of do. Well, I start with a like the recipe idea before I I start the brew itself, and then basically I do a narrative of how I brewed it. I boiled at, or I what I want to say. I mashed the grain at 145 for 60 minutes. Then I boiled, added a 3/4 of an ounce of Amarillo hops at 60 minutes, blah, 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 blah. And just kind of be as specific as I can with as much info as I can. And then, 2 days later, I'll go, added 4.87 grams of Fermade K. And do a date and time kind of a thing, just to kind of keep a narrative record of how I did it, and that's worked out well for me.
Cool. I might look into that.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. Been a fun night, Ravi, and you got to come back, dude.
I will.
We absolutely have to talk to you again. And like I said, I love your brewing method. Just pick it out of a hat, throw it in a fermenter, and see what happens. Good stuff. Anyway, again, thanks for joining us, Ravi.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for answering my questions.
You bet. We'll see you soon, bud.
See you soon. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye. All right. So that was Ravi Hausner. And I tell you, the guy, he's doing it right, man. Sounds like he's come up with some really tasty brews. I like that cider, the Sizer that he was talking about at the top of the show. Sounds like that was a big success for him.
I don't know why it never occurred to me to try avocado honey with Sizer, but that does sound super tasty. That might be coming this fall.
Yeah, there you go. Good stuff. Okay, so in segment 2, we last episode, I believe, we had a question in the social club talking about asking about some of the different cleaners and sanitizers and whatnot out there, and whether a cleaner is a sanitizer or vice versa. And so we thought we'd spend a little bit of time here in part 1 of segment 2 talking about cleaners, Jeff.
Yeah. So, I did some looking into this just to see what's in the market, because it feels like there are new products coming out all the time in this field of cleansers and sanitizers and stuff like that. And there are already more than I am used to from when I got started brewing. I did a little bit of research, did a little looking around, and I was honestly curious about the whole question of whether the One Step has sanitizer in it and where that's coming from. So I thought we'd just spend a few minutes talking about it. And so from what I'm seeing, bear in mind, none of these products will give a formula or like an exact chemical composition. But realistically, I think when it comes to the cleanser side, we can break these into 2 basic groups. There's the oxygen-based cleaners, and then there's an alkaline-based cleaner. And far and away, the majority of the ones that I'm seeing popular at homebrew stores are in that oxygen category. This is the One Step, the Easy Clean, PBWs in there. OxyClean technically falls into this category, although it's not recommended for use in this because there are food safe options, and OxyClean, to my knowledge, is not food safe. You've really got to rinse it well after you use it, but it's using the same kind of chemical process. And so the trick to these guys, from what I'm seeing, is that they're all based on a kind of chemical decomposition to turn into an oxygen related chemical. And so the reason that a number of retailers are saying that One Step cleaner has a bit of sanitizer in it is because when it decomposes, it actually turns into in a small amount hydrogen peroxide, which
there you go.
So it has a bit of sanitizer in it. It kind of will kill some stuff, but the main job of these guys is to be the cleanser. This is getting rid of the biofilm and the crud, and this will also loosen labels incidentally, but the main job is to get rid of anything biological, whether it's the leftover yeast or the kind of algae crud or the leftover dregs from the bottle. That's what the cleanser does. And it, in some cases, it may provide a level of sanitization, but I wouldn't recommend that for your sanitizing step. I would still recommend this as a separate step. Now, the other product in the cleansing field is an alkaline base, and this is actually closer to what a lot of the major breweries will use as far as their like clean in place systems, more like a lye solution or something in that regard. At least this is again based on my understanding, based on a little bit of armchair research. So if I'm wrong, correct me and shoot me an email, info@themeathouse.com, so that I can let everybody else know. But a lot of these guys are using an alkaline base cleaner like lye or sodium hydroxide or another hydroxide solution. And the advantage to that is that an oxygen based cleaner basically will do everything in about 45 minutes after being mixed with water, whereas that alkaline product can be like used for a lot longer or retains its functionality a lot longer. And so if you've got a really stubborn buildup or something like that you need to get cleaned off, or you've got a lot of brewery stone or crud in the fermenter or whatever, the lye or the sodium hydroxide or the alkaline solution is a little bit more effective and longer lasting. You can let that soak like overnight and it will continue working through that entire term.
Now, you say it also can be caustic here in your notes, and that's kind of important,
Right.
because if you've got any kind of aluminum utensils, that can be pretty dangerous, because I know anything caustic mixed with aluminum doesn't really mix very well. So
It also doesn't mix with human skin, which is important to know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so wear gloves at least, but very careful with aluminum. If you've got any aluminum utensils, using anything that has any kind of caustic soda or anything in it. So
Absolutely. Read your manufacturer's directions and warnings, and by all means, please follow them. They will tell you what level of contact is permissible and what kind of safety precautions you should be observing, better than a few guys that are sitting around drinking around a table can tell you, honestly. So
yeah. Ryan, what kind of, I'll tell you what, we'll just segue right into your Ryan's random thoughts, but your cleaning methods or cleaning products, what do you use?
We had an episode probably a year ago when we had on, maybe more. We had on the guys that make cleaners and sanitizers, and go back and find that episode, because that one was, I got compliments more than usual on that episode, and so that'd be a great one to follow up with.
Yeah.
Now with me, I typically use there's two different kinds of washes that I've got. One's an alkaline wash and one's an oxygen wash. And I'll use both of those, not together, but I've got both. And then I use, for sanitizer, I've used, Star San, I've used iodophor, I've used, some of those there's a non-foaming one that's the name escaping me. But the point is that, the cleaner cleans, the sanitizer sanitizes, and so, using both of those. But there are some really, really cool products. I think there's the formula is that old saying, fast, good, and cheap, pick two. That old saying, you can have it, you can have it good and fast, but it ain't gonna be cheap. You can have it cheap and fast, but it ain't gonna be good. You got three of those, you gotta pick two, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's three things with cleaning, and that I've noticed. You get like heavily soiled equipment, volume, amount of cleaner, heat, and time. And so if you need to clean it fast, you use a lot of cleaner, you use really hot water. If you don't have much cleaner, use really hot water and time, and it'll break it up. And so it's also knowing how to use it. It's not just what you use, but it's knowing how to use it. If I've got some really soiled fermenters, sometimes I'll throw stuff in there and just let it soak overnight, and then it just everything will kind of rinse right out. So knowing what to use is a good one. Craft Brewmeister. That was who we had on the show. I forget the episode number now, but the Brewmeister, the Craft Brewmeister, the great show on cleaning and sanitizing, and recommend that folks listen to that episode. I think you probably just type that into our search bar on the website, and it should pop right up, tell you what episode you need there. That's kind of it for cleaning and sanitizing on top of my head.
Excellent. And Ryan's go ahead, Jeff.
And that was incidentally episode 136. I just looked that up here.
There you go.
Thank you, Jeff. 136. Great episode. That one is worth a second.
It was a good episode.
All right, Ryan's random thoughts.
Yeah, I should have gone Ryan's random rant.
Random rant.
To keep it. There we go. Ryan's random rant. A couple things popped into my mind here as when I have too much time to myself. And the first one was, hey guys, I did a bunch of brewing here, kind of getting ready for the summer drinking season.
There you go.
And I bottled a red wine, so just a regular, not a piment, not just a nice red blend wine. So I got that, and then I made the rosé mead. So I got the rosé mead. Kind of, you'll see how this one turns out.
Okay.
But I got carbonated it, so I made a carbonated rosé mead. So that should be interesting. And then I made a Brew Firm. They're Pale Belgian. So the Brew Firm Pale Belgian. I used one of their kits and I made it into a braggot. And so one of the canisters, 3 pounds of honey, added a few more hops, and I'm excited about that. Again, I really like Belgian styles, and I think this will be a pretty good one. And then I got 2 more going. Actually, 2 more and then 1 more to talk about. One more was I made a Ryan braggot, but I used, so JD, I'm sorry, I can't send you this one.
That's okay.
But Jeff, I'll get you a bottle. I made a Ryan braggot and I added grapefruit puree to it.
Yeah, can't do that.
Very nice.
So I think this will be a nice little early summer drinker. Really pleasant.
Jeff, take copious notes for me, please.
And
Will do.
man, I love the color on it. It's like ultra pale, super. I mean, it's like super straw. It really looks beautiful. And then the other one I got going is, I guess I'd call it like a lemonade, a hard, like a fermented lemonade. There's a recipe that I've talked about in the past called Skeeter Pea.
Yeah.
Yep. And we talked about this guy. I tried to find him. I guess he's a Minnesota guy who created this recipe. I tried contacting him a little bit. I don't know if he's dead or just gone into seclusion or what, but he doesn't ever get back, doesn't want to talk. But it's a great recipe, and what I've done is I've made mead versions of that. So I make the mead. I replace the sugar with honey, and then you can take it where you want it. Dry, semi-sweet, sweet. It's a really, really nice drink. The Skeeter Pea, and then I guess I call it Skeeter Mead if you make it into a mead. And I made a Skeeter Mead, but I had a twist to it. It's great on its own. Like I've got many, many, many compliments on just the straight Skeeter Mead, and I recommend making it. It's an amazing summer drink. But what I did this time was I thought I'd add some flavor, and I added a bottle of the Amaretti pomegranate craft puree to make a pomegranate lemonade.
Mhm.
And I think that'll be good. And then so that's what I got. Like I said, I just kind of I had 2 fermenters. I don't do any more than 2 fermenters at a time anymore, because that gets me into less trouble.
Yeah.
and but they have been working. They've been working 3 shifts. Like the factory. If a factory's working 3 shifts, it's working 100% capacity.
At capacity.
These two are going at capacity here. These two, and I got with everything I've gotten going here. I gotta stack up here for the summer sun drinking season.
So.
And, go ahead, JD.
Well, I was going to say, before we get to the grade B stuff, I want to hear about the quick beer bread.
Yeah. So there's these recipes going around online, and maybe you guys have seen them. And it's a recipe for, I've seen it. It's the same recipe. It says you can use beer or wine or anything you want. Make a quick bread. And when we say quick bread, we mean you don't have to use yeast.
Mm-hmm.
So like we'd make a cornbread, right? You don't use yeast in cornbread or things like that.
Self-rising flour, yeah.
Right, or
baking
pancakes
powder
or something.
Yeah.
So right, so exactly. So this recipe that's going around basically says take 3 cups of self-rising flour, and if you don't have self-rising flour, really easy. It's just like I think a tablespoon and a half, or is it tablespoon and a half maybe, or a teaspoon and a half of baking powder per cup of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 3 cups of flour, 4.5 of baking powder, and you're good. Pinch of salt. Oh, and then you add in and then some sugar. I think it says like 3/4 cup of sugar. And then you add in your 12 ounces of beer, or you can do 12 ounces of wine or whatever you want. And it'll when you bake it, and you get nice little bread, quick bread. Well, like JD was saying, I decided this is a way. So when I've got B grade stuff, and I mean, my less than A, so A tier is your really good stuff. Your B grade is your lesser good stuff.
Yeah.
And typically what I do with the B grade stuff is I just keep it on hand, and when the neighbors you don't like come over, the relatives, the friends you don't care for, come over. Oh, you brew beer? I'd love to try some. You give them the bad stuff, and then they don't ask for any more, and they don't bother you.
Yeah.
So
you found a good use for it, huh?
I say that in jest. So what I did here is I made this quick bread with some of my B grade. Nothing wrong with it. It's just a little too, it's too polarizing for me. A little too sweet. A little kind of got some kind of conflicting flavors. I've had other folks that have enjoyed it, so there's nothing like technically wrong with it. And I do that. So I've made this bread, and this bottle that I've used is kind of roasty. It's got some roast to it. It's kind of sweet and roasty. And I made the bread, and then it was fine to eat. But then what I wanted to do is make French toast for the kids with it. So I just cut it into slices and put it on a baking sheet, and just put it in the oven, and just went to bed. Made it at night, went to bed, and come back in the morning, and the bread is pretty stale at that point. And that's what you want when you make French toast. You want the bread to be pretty, almost, you don't want like a crouton, but
type stuff, yeah.
You want it to be dry. Yeah. I mean, you want it to be thirsty to drink up that batter that you're, that mix that you're going to put it in. And it was really good. So I should say I also used honey. I used, instead of the sugar, 3/4 cup of sugar, I used the 3/4 cup of melter honey, and got some a little more flavor in it that way. So then I got to thinking that there's some things you can do. So I made it again, and I added a little vanilla to the dough, and some cinnamon to the dough,
Mm-hmm.
and made it kind of a sweet bread, because then I knew I was going to make it into this French toast. And you could do I mean, you didn't have to make it a French toast. You could just add those things and eat it as a sweet bread, or you could put some seasoning in that. It would be like a seasoned bread, or whatever you wanted. But I don't. I'm not trying to tell anybody it's going to like knock your socks off. It's going to be the best thing in the world, but it is an interesting way to take some of your maybe B grade. Like I said, if it's something that you just love, I wouldn't do anything more than put it in a glass and drink it. But if you've got some stuff that you're like, oh, this was a little bit off, or I don't really care for this stuff anymore,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's fun that you can, make it into a little bread here, and like I said, you can, eat it with just eat it as bread, or make it into a French toast, or you could make it into a really, really flavorful croutons, or something like that if you wanted to do something like that, or like stuffing, if you want to do stuffing, or even breadcrumbs if you wanted to bread something with it. Um, Really, really interesting way to do. Super easy, super fast, and as long as I have a handful of these bottles here of stuff that's B grade, um, it, I'm probably gonna keep playing around with it a little bit.
And so the batch that tasted too good while it was still green. I've had a couple of those. You
Yeah,
just keep going over to
yeah.
the fermenter with a dipper and keep
So
dipping it
this, yeah.
like the old
So
water bucket outside on the front
didn't
porch
get
with the dipper in it. You just keep dipping that out.
didn't get that bad. Made a batch of the um, Double Dam from Brew Firm. This is
Mm.
their Belgian double, and that's one of my favorite styles. The Belgian double is probably, when it's done correctly, is one of my favorite styles of beer. And uh, made a braggot out of it, and used buckwheat honey. So, and I actually upped it up. I used 5 pounds instead of 3 pounds. So all I did was I took the canister of the Brew Firm Double Dam and dumped it in the fermenter. Then I dumped 5 pounds of buckwheat honey in the fermenter. I just filled it up, to 5-ish gallons, and pitched the Belgian monastic, Abbey yeast,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. And let it rip. I think I might have put like a pinch of Energizer in there or something, but that was it. I did the true, no boil thing here with that they were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and it fermented out. I think actually, you know what, JD, I think I threw one single oak spiral on there. So I think I threw enough for 3 gallons on there, even though I was making 5 gallons, because I didn't really want a ton of. I didn't want it to be like oaked.
Yeah.
I just wanted like the little subtleness in there,
Yeah.
and let it ferment for about 6 weeks, and just because that's how long I think I wanted it to be on the oak, and bottled it up. I think I used like I just used like orange blossom or clover or something that I had on hand for the priming sugar. Bottled it, and when it was carbonated, right when a couple weeks after it's carbonated, drank a bottle, and oh my gosh, it was fantastic, just fantastic. And then I drank another bottle, and I drank another bottle, and I was like, oh my gosh, stuff's fantastic. And I gotta stop. I gotta stop doing that, because this stuff is designed. I wanted to age this stuff for like 6 months,
Yeah.
like a good Belgian double, and have it just be really fantastic. And so I'm trying to like hide the bottles, or make them really, really hard to get to, like put several things on top of the case.
Put
And so
put them
it's hard to get
all
to.
put them all in a box and give it to Andrea and tell her to hide the box when you go off to work one day.
And,
And don't forget where she put it.
yeah. So that's the thing, and maybe you guys can relate. So I guess we can run through those three things. I wouldn't mind hearing from you fellas if you're doing any brewing here for summer. If you've done anything with that, if you've done any if you've incorporated any of your stuff into cooking, and if you've ever experienced that, having something taste too good too soon and kind of forget to age it.
I've made. I don't have any plans on brewing anything right now. I don't have anything in the fermenters. We're taking off in the June 1st, and we're going to be gone all month. So I didn't want to have to put anything in a fermenter that was going to need some kind of attention during that 30 days. We'll be gone. So it won't start until I get back. But I have cooked with some of my stuff. I have taken mead and reduced it down, made sauces with it. I have brewed some kit wines in the past, found that I wasn't really a big fan, so the bottles that I still have here that are probably 4 and 5 years old, I cook with. One of my favorites is short ribs, and after I saute my onions or my mirepoix up, the onions, celery, and carrots up, I dump in a bottle of wine and I let it reduce down before I add my bone broth and turn my ribs back into it. So I have cooked with stuff that I have brewed. And yeah, I've had a batch that tasted pretty damn good. I like my cider. It's kind of hard to keep your fingers off of it after a while, and it does go fast. I mean, I love that. I love that dry carbonated cider that just tastes like a mouthful of Granny Smith apples that makes you want to go back after another bottle. So I dig that stuff. Jeff, how about you? You doing any brewing, stocking up for the summer? Push the mute button.
Hell. I am very behind on brewing. I've mentioned before, we're getting ready to sell the house, so my free time is getting laid up with laying flooring and repainting and new carpet and all kinds of fun DIY projects around the house, and it doesn't leave me a lot for summertime brewing. As far as the B grade stuff, like you, I've done a lot of cooking. I'll braise a pork loin in some okay mead, or reduce it down to make a thicker sauce, something like that. As far as the batch that had to be hidden so that it wouldn't get drank, the first time I made a mulberry mead based on the mulberries in our backyard. I think I've talked about this a time or two before, but that was so good, and it was kind of just so it represented a jump in my brewing skill too, that my wife and I were like, okay, we're going to take like these 6 bottles and we're going to put those in the fridge so we can enjoy those, and we're going to take these 12 bottles, we're just going to hide them somewhere else so that we don't drink them. And I found a few of those over the years, like, oh God, this was the mulberry. We should drink this. You don't want to hide it so well that you forget about it past the time that you want to drink it, because there's no return on investment after about 6 to 12 months. At that point, it has aged as far as it's going to go, and it's just not going to get any better. Yeah. So, enjoy it when it gets to that point.
I hear you. All right, good stuff, Ryan. We just might make this. I don't think it'll be a weekly feature, but maybe once a 6-week session. Ryan's random thoughts. I think that's pretty cool. Social Club guys. Of course, this is where we try to answer questions from mead makers out there with no formal expertise other than what we've experienced in our own brew house, and I guess that says a lot too, huh? Social Club. So let's get started here. This comes from my Mystic Shadow 669. I just love these guys' names. How to get rid of fruit smell from a bucket. Ryan says, hi guys. Just wondering if it's possible. The last batch I did was a peach and mango, and now even after a couple of good washes, it still has the smell of fermented peaches in it. Is that so bad? New bucket time and retire this one to fruit ferment, to fruit ferments only. I don't know. What do you think, Ryan?
I'm gonna read that one just because so I can stay with it here. Let's see.
I can speak slower.
The new, yeah, I mean, well, let's see. The last batch did was a peach and mango, and now we have a couple good wash. There's still the smell of fermented peaches in it. I mean, if it's washed, if it's sanitized, if there's not scratches or scuffs in it, and then it, you know, if you're gonna make it the more peach stuff and then much mango peach, go ahead. I remember once I had a really nice like stainless steel coffee mug, and the first thing that I put in it was like a peach green tea, and it took like a year. I mean, this is a brand new stainless steel coffee mug and like travel mug and really nice, a nice one, right? No scratches, no
Yeah.
scuffs, nothing. We could wash it out, use all kinds of kitchen cleaner, or not kitchen cleaner, but the dish cleaner,
Mm-hmm.
and that scent would not leave. Wouldn't I mean, even after I put coffee in it, and I could still smell the damn peaches. So maybe there's something about peaches that sticks around a while, but I guess it again, if you've cleaned it, if you sanitized it, if there's not scuffs or scratches on it, and you're gonna make more peach mango, it's probably fine. But if you're gonna make a coffee one after that, you don't want your coffee mead to have peach aroma in it. Yeah, you might want to get a new bucket.
Jeff, is it possible to get rid of the peach and mango smell out of a plastic bucket?
So, kind of piggybacking on what Ryan said, look at the condition of the bucket. If it's scratched or cruddy looking, you just want to replace that. And usually in my brew house, I cycle like the latest retired bucket into my PBW soak, which if that alone is the issue, I'd honestly try a PBW soak to see if that doesn't clean anything up, because it's a good solution for getting rid of organic chemicals and things like that. The other thing I would suggest is maybe a strong citric acid solution. I know a lot of breweries will use that to get rid of discoloration or other, the kind of crud that builds up in lines and pipes and things like that, and things that can be brought along by tannins. So that might be useful too. Just a very strong. You buy the citric acid at your brew store, mix it with water, and let that kind of soak for a little bit. So that could be useful as well.
Yeah, I use PBW on my beer lines and kegs and everything, and I like that stuff. And it does a fantastic job. Never been left with unusual smells or smells from the previous batch or whatever that occupied that particular keg. And it gets every bit of crud out of the beer lines and all the equipment, the nozzle end and the fixture end. So. So that's good stuff. So I highly recommend PBW. I mean, and certainly, listen to the previous segment where we talked about the cleaners and the sanitizers and whatnot. There's all kinds of products out there. Just make sure you read all the directions, from top to bottom. Know what you're using before you use it. Next one up, guys. This is from Stu Right Stuff. Should I sample before bottling it? Yes. Okay, I'll read the rest of it. Hi, all. I have a small carboy full of Nord mead recipes from the official Elder Scrolls cookbook that I'm pretty sure is ready for bottling. This is my first time trying to brew mead, and I don't want to order a bunch of bottles and auto siphon just to discuss. Now, okay, I'll say something after this. But anyway, I don't want to order a bunch of bottles and auto siphon just to discover I screwed it up. Is there any reason I can't open the carboy, pour a small portion, and just make sure it's not garbage before I spend the money on all that stuff? I want to ask one question here. How much did you have to spend on the honey? I don't know where you buy your honey at, but where I buy mine, it ain't cheap. But anyway, yes, absolutely sample it. Sample it every step of the way. That's how you keep track of what it's doing, what it potentially might taste like in the end. You also pick up some unusual things that you maybe don't want before it gets there, and you might have an opportunity to make some adjustment too, Jeff. What do you think?
Let's put it this way. If you're going to make dinner for your in-laws, would you taste the food before you put it on the table? I sure as hell would.
That's a good... I have to remember that.
I mean, yeah. You want to make sure that what you are putting out there is good. And the only thing that I will caution in his approach that he's listed here, not to pour a sample. There is a tool called the Wine Thief. Little glass or plastic tube you sanitize first, obviously. We just talked about that. You stick that in the mead, take a little sample, pour that into a glass. That lets you taste without risking oxidization and nasty stuff like that. It's a good tool. I highly recommend it. Look into it because they're nice for sampling, which you should be doing on a fairly regular basis. Maybe not as regularly as you're doing, testing the gravity in the first few weeks or so, but you kind of need to know where things are going and how things are tasting. Not only in the ferment, but in long-term aging and before you bottle. So yeah, no, you should absolutely be tasting the stuff before you put it in a bottle, because how are you going to know if you like it or not?
Mm-hmm.
It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This next one is probably for the science guy too. Sword to the Stones, Jeff. Original gravity question. I apologize if this has been answered before or asked a bunch of times, but how do you determine OG outgoing gravity when you have a fruit additives, as the sugar content in the fruit won't show up on your hydrometer with the initial reading? Thanks in advance. Explain that to. This is probably the 10th time that we've run this by, talked about this, but explain it to us again, Jeff.
Sure. So the idea here is, and this is a complicated question. I don't mind answering this again. So the idea is that there is a sugar content in your must when you mix the honey and the water together. There's a sugar content in the fruit. But if you're putting whole fruit, like let's say blueberries or cherries, into a mead, the sugar in that fruit is not immediately going to affect the original gravity that you're measuring with your hydrometer the day you mix everything up. And there is also water content in that fruit that may or may not be more or less than the water content of your must. So in a lot of cases, to be honest, I measure the original gravity of the must that I'm putting fruit into in primary, and then put fruit in and kind of just watch and assume that it's going to trend a little bit lower than it otherwise would, because generally speaking, I think there's going to be a higher water to sugar ratio in the must than there is in the fruit. So it's actually going to dilute my must just a little bit. If you guys follow that.
Yeah. Well, I've added the fruit to meads as well, and I honestly, I don't even count it. I mean, it's going to be. I think there's so little impact on the yeast. Especially when you're looking at a hydrometer, are you even going to be able to measure that? I doubt it. So I mean, was it 1 point, 2 points? I mean, if we're getting down to brass tacks here, how important is it? Honestly, right. I mean, the bottom line is, would you come up with a 14.5 ABV? Just call it 14. and be done with
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
To be honest, we're not selling this. This is for us
Exactly.
to drink.
Yeah.
So our, you know, our obligation to provide an accurate label is basically so our friends don't get schnockered and try to drive home.
Yeah.
It's not to provide an accurate label to consumer like the federal government would, you know, require. So
yeah.
I think my rule of thumb works for me.
Sounds good. Ryan, last one for tonight. This is from Crucible FG, I guess, 123. Anyone here done a Bochet with both EC 118 and 1116? I'm curious if there was a noticeable difference or you preferred one. For context, I'm doing a slightly more complex Bochet. I'm doing a Bochet Acerglyn with some super aromatic and less sweet backyard maple syrup from a workmate, about 80-20 honey to syrup by sugar, not by volume. And the honey was cooked for about 80 minutes until it was Guinness Black. Currently just sitting in the fermenting bucket, waiting for me to add water and start to ferment. A lot to probably go there, and you've got roughly a minute and a half. Now, take your time. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I've done Bochet. I've done it with 1116. I don't believe I've ever done a Bochet with 1118, and I know I've never done side-by-side batches where the only variable was the yeast, and then tried to decide, which one, would imparted the more desirable qualities. The maple syrup. He said so 80% maple syrup, 20% honey. Or I'm sorry, 80%, 80-20 honey to syrup, which is good. It's probably better to do 80-20 honey to syrup than syrup to honey. The Guinness Black, that could be tough for you. That could be acrid, and it might be ashy or burnt. You got to be careful with that one. You might have to blend in some non-Bochet honey if you need to soften that one a little bit. And then your 20% maple syrup, again, maple syrup will ferment all the way out. I mean, it'll leave aroma, but it won't leave any flavor. And so I would ferment, treat it like we do the Ryan Braggots or like a Belgian. Kind of at the high kreuzen, so to speak, of your mead, or post this right after the most vigorous fermentation, even if you want to be really safe. Then add your maple syrup in, and have that on the back end, and you'll probably hold on a little more of the aromas and a little bit of the flavor better than if you throw it all in up front. Because if you go up front, especially with Bochet honey, and that's like the first thing that the yeast is going to go to work on, because that's the simplest, easiest at that point, probably sugar for them to chomp on. So add that on the back, and then again, just taste that honey and see if it's a little too much. You might want to cut it with some raw honey.
And I have to apologize here. This actually goes on to another paragraph, and when I put these into my show notes, I actually thought that this was another post. It is not. It goes on, Ryan, and we'll I'll tell you what, we're going to spend the overtime here. I apologize to our audience out there, but we are going to run into overtime. So what? Okay, going on, Ryan. It says, I'm adding toasted dates and figs to it, as well as raisins and bananas. And I'm going to step feed it with some uncooked honey, aiming for 18%, and see if I can push it to 20-ish. Finally, back sweetening with more maple syrup and racking with either French oak or bourbon oak staves. I'm going for a very heavy and boozy, port-like borderline oil. I need as much complex flavor as possible to balance out the inevitable cake in the bottle, cake in a bottle sweetness. So I'm leaning towards 1116 because he's heard that it can bring out fruit flavors better. Also, I don't have any 1118 and don't want to wait until Friday to start. Are you kidding me? All right. So, if you caught all that, Ryan, again, I apologize. I thought that second paragraph was another post, and I started reading down to the next one, and lo and behold. So take a stab at it.
JD, I've never tried to push one up is, to 20% here. So you might have some better thoughts on that. But, yeah, you could, adding some wood in there is fine. I think that the French oak or the bourbon oak staves, I think sometimes people overthink a lot of that stuff. Oh, should I use toasted or toasted plus?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, they're both probably going to be fine. It's not.
Yeah.
Unless you've got, a Cicerone or a palate or a sommelier's palate, it's probably not going to, make much of a difference. But, so French oak, very nice. Or if you want a bourbon oak, maybe you'll get hints of bourbon in there. Not all bourbon oak staves I've seen have actually given off bourbon oak flavor. So keep in mind, sometimes they're just more like a used oak or a softer oak, depending on where you're getting that stave.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is the toasted dates and figs. I've never used toasted dates and figs. I don't know what to tell them about that. It's something I've never done, but maybe interesting. Again, just be careful not to add anything burnt, I suppose. But raisins and bananas. I hope he's. Those are the best nutrients, right, guys? Those,
The ferment are.
Yeah. And so the raisins. I think they're going to give some. They might help with, and the bananas might help with a little bit of body, a little bit of mouthfeel.
Body, yeah.
But neither of them are going to give you a ton of flavor. Even when you're making like a banana meat, you've got to use like 30 pounds of bananas. You don't need banana flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, it's mouthfeel, body, maybe some little bit of, I guess the complexity is the word he likes using here. It's just, I don't have a huge strong guidance here, but that's just kind of more of Ryan's random ramblings.
Well, pushing it to 20% is a chore. The two port meads that I did, they required a lot of intensive attention. You got the right idea here about step feeding some honey into it. You don't want to dump all your honey in at once. You want to start out big to get it going, based on whatever your outgoing gravity is. Make sure you stay in some tolerance of whatever yeast you might be using. But to push it to 20% takes very, very intense care and looking after to get it to that point. Stay up with your nutrients. Be careful how much of that you add, and step feed your honey a little bit at a time. Make sure you're taking accurate readings off your hydrometer, and watch your temperatures. It's very critical. You might find yourself having to run the temperatures up a little bit to keep it going, and then gradually bring them down again as it continues on to ferment, and then maybe run them up again when you add the next little bit of honey. Just because the bottom line is here, you need to keep the yeast happy and hungry, and make them want to come back to eat some more. And that can be a real chore once you approach the yeast tolerance, the alcohol tolerance for that particular yeast, whatever you're using. So it's a chore. Believe me, it's a chore. But I like the direction this guy's going. And the thing about the bananas, Ryan is absolutely correct. Now, I use bananas in both of my port meads. Both of them went in up front. I used probably, like 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds of bananas. Dirty, rotten, black, just black bananas, okay? Peel and all. went into the fermenter, and what that did is it gives it body and some mouthfeel. That's it. There is zero banana flavor whatsoever, Jeff. So that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah. No. So we're in reading the last little bit of this. You see, he says he's leaning towards the 1116 because it brings out fruit flavor, and also he can't get 1118 before Friday, and he doesn't want to wait. So it sounds like he's looking for, go ahead, do 1116. So officially, I will say on the record, go ahead, do 1116.
There you go.
That said, I have also heard that 1116 is better for fruit flavor, and I'll kind of agree. I've used that. I feel like 1118, from what I've been told, from what I've experienced, is a non-discriminate eater that will just chew up every last little bit of everything it can get its hands on, and can kind of mute some flavors as it goes. With the flavor profile he's going for here, especially with these stone fruits and other darker fruits, 1116 would probably be better for it. I would otherwise just concentrate on keeping a good clean ferment so that the alcohol flavor doesn't overwhelm those other flavors, especially the banana, which can be hard to pronounce.
There you go. Good deal. All right, we're going to wrap it up right there. And what a fun show we had tonight. I'll tell you what, thanks for hanging out with us here at the Mead House. And a big thank you to Ravi Hauser for spending some time with us here in this episode. And hey, if you want to get on the show too, hey, it's easy enough. All you got to do is let us know what you're brewing. Email us info@themeadhouse.com, or just send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, both at The Mead House. And we'll set you up a date and talk to you about your brewing projects and get you on the air. So, hey, in the meantime, happy mead making. That's it for just for this. Maybe I've had too much of this. I'm telling you, this cherry mead, dude, this Deviant, Jeff, is like, it's almost like drinking your favorite soda, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, and washing it down with a bourbon, I think I've had enough. Anyway, hey, that's it for this episode. Ryan, flip by soft shut, slam the door shut. I don't know, maybe we got to reverse that next time around. But hey, we'll be back next week. Last one for this session. Remember, it'll be episode 198, and then after that, we come back and we're just too shy of that big 200 we're looking forward to. So, hey, that's it here at the Mead House, and we are gone. We'll see you next week.